Welcome to the Phygital Dish, where we serve up fresh insights on how technology is bridging the gap between the physical and the digital, creating seamless and personalized interactions for businesses and consumers alike. Let's dig in.
We're back at it. A little more Phygital Dish time. How are you feeling today?
I'm feeling pretty phygital. I gotta tell
Pretty
you,
phygital?
pretty phygital.
Excellent. Little physical, little digital. Sounds like a good mix to me.
Yeah,
Sounds
yeah,
like
absolutely.
A good mix. So today I think we have to talk about robots. We're gonna talk about robots. We're gonna talk about autonomous things. We're gonna talk about and we're not gonna talk about autonomous coffee.
No,
We're going to talk about autonomous robots and delivery vehicles for a little bit. So the other day, I'm doing now what people do. And yes, I am not the generation that TikTok was started for, but my sons have gotten me hooked. And I was watching a video, and there was an autonomous delivery vehicle on a university campus that had gotten itself high-centered on a curb. And it was unable to go right, left, forward, backward, and it asked for assistance. And a college girl walked over and picked the autonomous vehicle up and put it back on the sidewalk. And it was very polite. It thanked the college girl, and it drove off. So the question today that I want to find out is, Are we living in autonomous world now? Are we about to deliver things by drone? Is that where we're headed?
I think the bigger question we should answer here is if that was a college male student, would have helped it out, or would they messed with it a little bit, right?
Yeah, right.
Like, what would have happened if that story was flipped a little bit there? So
There you go.
on
There you go.
College student for helping that robot out. So I don't know, IV. I think about that story, actually. I watched a show. It was on Netflix, and it was called Everybody's in L.A. And it was a John Mulaney kind of like variety show. It was a limited episode thing. But one of the characters in the show was, I don't remember the company it was, but it was one of those roving robots that delivers your food, either hot or cold. And it would come into the studio, and then like people would start to like it, and then it would start to get annoying as it would start to go by. And then everybody's like, I hate you, robot. And then they kicked it out of the studio. And then they did this video of it roaming around the city with the sad eyes, and then they started to miss it. So
wow.
I mean, it was this whole story, but you think about that, it's like it's too new. So then everybody's annoyed with it, but then you're like, oh, I really, really want some convenience right now. I really, really wish I had that robot to deliver stuff. So I would say yes. I would say we're heading into a world where those types of robots, autonomous drones, connected delivery, and all of these. I think we're getting to that point of where that's going to become much more mainstream, especially in hub cities where you're close to the product already. I think it's going to become more of a reality sooner than later.
Sooner than later, do we think? And this is always the question that I have when I see those, like super cool technology. Yeah. The cool thought process that we've geolocated that well, that we have the technology to do it. Like even the autonomous cars that are out there now that are being tested on roads, seeing them and there's a level of fear that's associated with that, and yet there's a level of just accomplishment that's part of that. But then the real question that I think that I'm interested in is, how do those technologies become something of scale? How do they become something that is valuable on a broader notion than just one cart rolling down the street carrying, one meal or two pizzas or something like that? How does that translate in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think it translates by making it so that it's so ubiquitous and so cost effective that there's not a negative burden on the consumer or anything else to bear the cost of doing this, because the technology is not cheap. I mean, it's getting cheaper. But if you think about the earliest drones and things that were out there, one, they were gargantuan, large, ugly, loud things. and they're
Yeah.
still pretty loud. You're not going to miss a big Amazon drone sneaking up
Right.
there. They sound like a
Right.
little helicopter.
Yeah.
But you know, the cost of that delivery, there's a surcharge. There's other things that are on top of that. So if we get to the point of, well, what's the human cost element? What's all of these other things? Can I build that in and have predictability around it when there's not a human involved? So I look at a lot of events and things that I've gone to recently, golf events or others. There's always the big giant drones out there that have the cameras and all of that, but there's
Yeah.
somebody controlling that. There's some autonomy
Right.
to it, but there's somebody
Right.
controlling it. What we're talking
Yeah.
about is fully autonomous, getting to their location, doing what they
autonomous.
need to do, go back,
Yeah.
little human interaction. Maybe there's inspection afterwards. Once we get to the point of no financial burden down or little financial burden down to the consumer and very, very good predictability in a fully autonomous manner, those two things happen, which they're happening. That's where we get it to be more widespread. And again, we're seeing it today. I've been in multiple places where I've seen Amazon deliveries happen or other
Yeah.
kitschy deliveries like a Domino's pizza delivery, right?
Right,
Of
right.
like, that's cool. But it's like, think back. How many times have you seen that yourself? I've seen it maybe a handful of times.
Yeah.
I think once we
Yeah.
get to the point of every couple of days or whatever, if you're in a major
Yeah.
location, you see it,
Yeah.
then you're going to get to be like, all right, this is becoming real. This is a real thing now.
Yeah, that's interesting. I actually was having a conversation a few months ago with someone about being in Las Vegas, and they were commenting on autonomous vehicles in Las Vegas because
Yeah.
there's a fair amount of autonomous testing going on there, especially if you're there around the CES times or otherwise, right? And they were commenting on that, and I said, you know, one of the things that is a factor for me is how is the technology being accepted in a space that didn't have it previously. And at the convention center near the North Hall, there is autonomous car parking where you get picked up in those spaces. So taxis cannot drive into that autonomous space.
Yeah.
They have left those for driverless cars to pull into, get picked up, and then go driving. That kind of acceptance, I think, is kind of where you're headed, right? Where is that becoming something that becomes part of the space you already know?
Well, I do think that, but I also want to ask you: have you ever ridden in one of those autonomous
No,
cars?
no,
They're
haven't got
so
there yet.
weird because there still has to be a person in them. Like, there's still somebody
Yeah.
there
Oh, yeah.
most of the time doing like has to be review. So he's not driving the car; he's just kind of
Right.
sitting there. It's like, are you another passenger? Just like pay no attention to the man behind the curtain, right? It's
Right,
you're just sitting up
right,
there.
right,
And in
right.
some places, I don't know if it was LA or somewhere else, like the Waymo cars or whatever. They actually put like almost like a sheet or something over the person to make them like not there, but they're there. It's so weird. It's so weird.
It's very Wizard of Oz of them. That is
It
very
really kind of
Wizard
is.
Oz.
But I mean, look, they got to get to
Yeah.
the point where I don't know what percentage of it'll make a better decision
Yeah.
versus a real vehicle or something. I think that's
Yeah.
also already there because they can
Yeah.
think quicker.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, but to the other point, yes, when it becomes more mainstream in those types of spaces where you're like, now there's EV parking, but there's now also autonomous parking. That's a very interesting
Yeah.
thing. And so is it
Yeah.
going to be, in a lot of stores and stuff, is there going to be a dedicated pickup location on mom and pop shops if they want to deliver
Sure.
same day? Because what this opens
Right.
up is, Amazon and Walmart and even Target and other, they can deliver same day either through their own service or through a Shipt or somebody else.
Sure,
But now think
sure.
about, bespoke locations, mom and pops, smaller locations that can't afford to do an aggregator service. What if there was a way for them to have a same 30-minute drone delivery or something else? I want to see it once it starts breaking into that type of space where it's not just for the very, very large same day, 1 hour type delivery organizations.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to kind of seeing that take shape.
Yeah, and I think that actually is a very interesting thought process. From the perspective of reducing the size category of this technology and how it becomes valuable. When you talk about that, I actually think about something that you wouldn't normally think about. There's being in Nebraska, but also just in the general center of the country, you see a lot of farmland and farming, whatnot. And one of the things that's come out from John Deere and from Case IH, both big tractor manufacturers, is these drone packages that map and then guide the process of planting a field, right? And then also going back and watering that field or irrigating that field, and then increasing subsequently the yield that's associated with that.
Yeah.
That is taking what would have been technology that could have never been afforded potentially by the family farmer or even small, corporate farmer, and bringing that in line to create more value. That's very in line with the same type of bespoke conversation that you're having there. I think that's really interesting. Is there an opportunity also in your commentary, not only to have one bespoke provider utilize that service, but could you maximize that across multiple brands? Yeah. Right? If you have a strip mall with 6 or 7 brands, could an autonomous vehicle pick up 6 or 7 items and go and deliver them all without even thinking about it? That's a really interesting thought.
Well, I think it's possible, Ivy, but think about it this way. You don't want just anybody or anybody's AI or anybody's, wayfinding and tracking flying that drone. And, in the case of a Case IH and a John Deere, or the case of, Walmart or an Amazon, they put a lot behind that, because if Walmart drone or John Deere drone crashes into something, that's a lot. So we can't have, like we have here in Oklahoma after hailstorm, fly-by-nighters wanting to replace your roof. I don't want fly-by-nighters flying those drones, right?
Those drones, right?
I know there's federal standards that are coming around it. There's municipality standards. There's obviously, if you're in a city with a large airport or Air Force bases, there's a lot of rules around, especially the aerial drones, right?
Yeah.
There's not a whole lot of standards around what's going to stop you or I from out of the back of our house buying some really, really good drones and saying, I'm going to do delivery service for you. I mean, there probably are laws, but there's people that are going to do it. So I think we got to make sure that there's some sort of standard around that. And again, I'm not super versed in the space, but just thinking about, what I am used to in the space, like IoT, still to this day, there's very little security standards around IoT. It's easier than you would think with a little flipper tool to hack a lot of IoT devices that are out there, because there's no standards. Now think about something that's flying. Maybe it's just flying my burger, but maybe it's flying precious cargo. Maybe it's flying something else. So the security risks and ramifications around that are huge. And then, I could dovetail into what is one of the other big, the long poles in the tent is connectivity. How are these devices actually staying online? There's satellite, there's cellular, there's multiple other methods, but this gets down to another, and it's old hat for me, but talking about you got to have reliable connectivity for them as well. So security standards and connectivity, it's got to be there, even for these types of activities.
Yeah, and I think
these types of activities.
Especially for these types of activities. And I think that actually begs kind of an interesting question, which is, we're talking and thinking a little bit beyond maybe what the norm is today. As you said, as this becomes more adopted, you'll see it more often. It's kind of like the Jetsons. We all watched it as a kid, right? There were robots and whatnot. But the question then I might ask you is, where are you seeing brands utilize portions of this technology to their advantage? Where are people saying, hey, can't fly drones yet? Maybe can't buy an autonomous vehicle to drive down the street and deliver, one pizza, but where are they using technologies that are more autonomous than they were before, or guiding their fleets in a better way to be able to deliver or actuate that?
Yeah. So it's not necessarily a new thing, because connectivity inside of in the logistics industry, whether it's delivery or the service industry as well, has been around for a long time. But it's really been to track the speed of a driver, track miles of a driver, track those types of things. But now we're getting to, very, very good route mapping, getting around, accident avoidance type stuff, real-time
Yeah.
inventory and logistics, last mile type stuff where,
Sure. Yeah.
somebody wanted this product. It's not in the distribution center, but this store has it, and it's this on your route. So that type of thing from a route planning and logistics, we've seen that for a while, but it's getting a lot smarter. The prevalence of LTE and 5G connectivity inside of vehicles, whether they're fleets or something else, the barrier of entry is very, very low now, extremely low. So to be able to get, connected fleets is something that's coming to fruition before and definitely now. But think about it from, the service industry. If I get my windshield replaced in my driveway, I know exactly where that vehicle is, right? Whether I'm getting it in my driveway or at my office, because they're all tracked as well. And that's not just for their logistical purposes. That's for me. Now there's a selling point as a consumer. I know that you are 2 miles away because I'm tracking it through here. And now if you look at like in the delivery industry, a lot of that's done through beaconing on people's phones, but these are actually being done through the vehicle itself is connected. And so now we can get very, very prescriptive on, I'm going to be here exactly at this time and you can track me through the entire process. Again, it's not a new thing, but we're seeing it become much more pervasive inside of that service industry, whether you're installing a windshield or whether you're coming to my house and installing tires or something else. These are services that we become used to with the Amazons and Walmarts of the world, but now it's breaking its way all the way into anything that you can think of that's going to be driving around, delivering something, doing a service for your house. You can track them.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I think what, if you really think about what you just said there, from the perspective of how does that translate, right? It translates not only to just a better customer journey or a better customer experience, it also, though, then creates a bigger web of available data that becomes valuable not only to the consumer, but also to those companies. And it creates more stability as we move away from, hey, we've got a driver in the car, and to, hey, we don't have a driver in the car, and oh, by the way, we don't have the Wizard of Oz behind the white sheet. We have no one in there except a passenger, and what does that mean, and how does that create more safety in that process? And I think that's really key. I think the other thing that's real interesting is, where does this start to affect technologies that we know extremely well today, like a drive-through experience? Where do technologies start to become simpler in the process of autonomous delivery without being autonomous, right? So the example that I always think of is McDonald's is a good example of where you pull up and their mobile app, you give them this 4-digit code if you've ordered on the app, and then you pull right through if you've paid and you pick up your food. Can I create a scenario, to your point, instead of just geolocating the phone, can I create a more autonomous environment where they already know a vehicle is coming that is going to pick up my food and then get out of there? So does that start to ease those mass transactions that are associated with that? You also mentioned something that I thought was really interesting that I want to hit on a little bit from your perspective. This idea of, it's not in the warehouse, it's not I don't want to ship it from across the country, but a store in my route has it. That is actually a really interesting perspective, but it begs the question that I'm interested, the question that I would ask you, which is, do we have the sophistication above the autonomous vehicle or above the delivery vehicle, whether there's a human there or not? Do we have the sophistication of that data to be able to make those kinds of decisions yet? Right? Are the retailers carrying that kind of data with them? I think there are probably some that are. The Amazons of the world probably are, but are the smaller retailers that are out in the world that you're interfacing with on a daily basis, do they carry that kind of data granularity?
I would say the capability is absolutely there. It's gotten very, very good. But if you even look at like, so I'll give it, two dichotomies here. Of like the grocery industry. You look at something, if you're getting like groceries delivered from Walmart, there is not a single time that I get groceries delivered, which I'll admit is way too much. I can just go right down the street, but it's right here. But they're out of something or substitute something, and you could
Oh,
walk in there and maybe it's there, and maybe it was just misplaced or something else. So the real-time inventory is very, very hard in that type of scenario. But think about it, you're in a smaller type scenario. Your SKU list is much, much smaller. You should know exactly real time when those things are going off the shelf, when you need to, replace
yeah.
them. And that's why you have things like, I was trying to remember it's basically, you don't walk into the grocery store. It's a grocery store only created for food delivery. And so
Oh,
they know their
sure.
inventory. That's
Yeah.
Jack
Yeah.
B. It's called Jack B.
Sure. Okay.
Because Jack
Okay.
B nimble, right? And so
Yeah,
there's
right,
grocery stores
right.
that are created only for the delivery industry. So there's no longer it's out of stock. When you pick that, it's already allocated to you and you know it's there, and that's
Yeah.
exactly what you're getting. So
Yeah.
I think what it takes is a business that is building their framework around, I always want and need real time, always on, can't be wrong data. And that can happen, but you kind of have to set your business up for it. But there are other businesses that can do it as well. I've seen, even recently GameStop has done a lot of that, where there's
Yeah.
a lot of last mile pickup that they do a pretty decent job around some of their inventory.
Yep.
So it can be done. The technology's there, but going and taking a SKU of 50,000 is tough. But if you look at like a SKU, if a Costco or somebody were to do it, where they're notoriously slim, I mean, they're like a couple thousand SKUs versus 50,000 SKUs.
Yeah.
They would be
Yeah.
much better set up to do that than somebody else would. So I
Yeah.
think it's about, do you want to make the effort and just making it all about that type of consistency in the data that's there? Or is it just a convenience factor? It's a best effort. I've got too many SKUs to make sure that it's all going to be here, but we're going to do as best as we can. We can get to where there's real-time data, but that's going to take a different technology shift inside of our stores. That's going to take either sensors or something else inside the stores. That the minute that's lifted, the minute that's pulled out, maybe things are expired and they shouldn't be on the shelves, and you shouldn't be selling it anyway.
Right. Right.
There's infrastructure that's going to have to change inside of a lot of these locations. That's going to allow for that ability to say, I got what I wanted when I wanted it, when I ordered it, and I didn't get a substitution. Because guess
Yeah.
what? Doritos are Doritos. They're not the store brand. Right?
That's right. That's
Yeah.
exactly right. But I think you actually hit on two things that are interesting there. There is some, I don't know if I'd say irony, but there's some thought process to the fact that Costco, at its physical size of a store, really does have a very limited SKU palette, right?
Yeah.
And so how do you maximize that type of data? But the other thing you mentioned, and I think about our friends over at Pricer who do ESLs in the ESL world in general, this idea of dark room picking, right? This idea of off show floor, I'm in the back room, I've
Yeah.
got stacks and shelves of items. I use ESLs to light up and pick quickly, but
Yeah.
then do I translate that into an easier delivery model like a Jack B, where I'm not walking in, I'm just picking it up and going, right?
Right.
I think that's a very interesting environment. Well, I think this is fascinating. We started with autonomous vehicles. We've seen some of those real applications in dark rooms or even in data usage of a limited SKU environment. I think you touched on the connectivity piece really becomes really important. The one thing that still lingers in the back of my head, if you're a Parks and Recs fan, is Ron Swanson shooting the drone out of the air. To your point, he did hear it coming, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It was not a small item, right? That it flew down and dropped in, and he didn't like that. And I think there is a fear factor there that's associated with it. That's very natural with this type of technology, right? I think that's normal.
Yeah, it is. I mean, look, we're getting to the point where it's going to become more real and every day, but right now it still is interesting and scary to some people. And
Yeah.
we've got a lattice work of different jurisdictions and requirements for it. And until we've got, this is what it is, there's still going to be those things that are That is kind of scary. Look at now, we had drones around New Jersey and all that. We couldn't figure out what it was for 6 months, and it's like that was completely normal. Okay, well then tell us it was completely normal.
Right.
Get some jurisdiction around this. So yeah.
Exactly.
Until we get there, then I'm going to be. I may be. I'll use it, but if I don't know what that is and I didn't order it and it's hovering, I may be a little bit of Ron Swanson.
Well, and here's what you and I have to agree on. The first time we are in a autonomous vehicle without someone behind the curtain, we have to take a video and then have that for
we
some
do.
discussion.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah, let's try it in Vegas.
Look forward to it.
Right.
Well, thank you, Court. Look forward to hearing about autonomous deliveries in the future, and have a great day.
All right, you too.
Thanks for tuning in to the Phygital Dish, where physical and digital worlds collide to transform industries and consumer experiences. We hope today's episode gave you the insight you need to stay ahead in this evolving landscape. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and join us next time for another serving of industry advice and innovations from the intersection of technology and business. And remember, stay inspired, keep innovating, and we'll catch you next time.